This very short lecture is on managing Ontario's forests, the Aboriginal component. In Ontario, we have discussed already that we have this area of undertaking, and within this area of undertaking, the area shown displayed here with all the forest management units, we have many Aboriginal communities, and of course the entire area is managed for forestry. So one of the big push by the MNR through the Environmental Assessment Act was to encourage the involvement of the Aboriginal communities within the area of undertaking. So, as a quick reminder, the Aboriginal peoples of Ontario, all First Nations have treaties, and we'll get into that, and also they have access to all the Crown land, and they have the right to hunt and fish for personal consumption. So these are the basic overview components in regards to Crown land. One of the things I'm going to be asking you to do in one of the quizzes is to be able to click on the large map and find various First Nation communities, so you can become familiar with the treaties and the communities. The communities are in red, as you can see here. That's along the way, and of course they are scattered way, and they're way up north, and of course they're across the entire boreal forest. The treaty areas are the colored areas that you see along the way, and some of these treaties are currently in legal issues, and others are not. But this is the treaty, so we're going to have you practice looking at the different treaties throughout Ontario. Here, just to give you, this again is the French Severn Forest, just as an example. This is the Forest Management Unit, which is run by the SFL, which is called Westwind Forest Management Company, and for the French Severn Forest Management Planning Area. A mouthful, all indeed. But in here, I've just taken this area, I've zoomed in, and you can see here a number of the different communities when you zoom in onto the treaties map in just the area surrounding Parry Sound. So the Aboriginal communities within the French Severn Forest Management Planning Area. And it's very important as forestry techs to be aware of all the different groups and all the various groups which can become involved in the forest management planning process. So the Aboriginal peoples, the legislation reflects a commitment through policy to address Aboriginal issues. They want to encourage First Nation involvement in the forest planning process, and this is through the local citizens group committee and through a direct connection to the planning committee. They include a native consultation, and what I've also included here, which is always important, so you have is a perspective written by First Nations that will be attached to this document in regards to what is the feeling in regards to the policy that's currently undertaken for forestry and Aboriginal success. So here, what I want to do is just the Aboriginal involvement. How does it play into... So first of all, when you look at the Forest Management Planning System in Ontario, provides particular opportunities for the involvement of Aboriginal people both in the planning process and in forest management activities. And this here, one of the key things is to understand is that there's two different elements. So there are, excuse me, let me try this again. There's Aboriginal rights and treaty rights. And so you have to understand those two different elements. So the Aboriginal rights are a legal right derived from historic occupation and possession of tribal lands. Okay, so that's the one. And treaty rights are rights that were established in agreement between the Crown and individual or groups of First Nations. And some of these treaty rights it can be very involved, but just to be aware, there's Aboriginal rights and treaty rights. And to give you an example of what is an Aboriginal right, so let me see, there we go. So when we look at it, this is done, it doesn't work the best here, but let me try this again. There we go. And try that. So when you look at the that Aboriginal right to fish or hunt, that's an Aboriginal right, and that is protected through court decisions, and very important to recognize that this is an Aboriginal right. So in 1994 environmental assessment approval for forest management in Crown lands in Ontario included numerous terms and conditions related to Aboriginal involvement in forest management, several of which are reflected in the current Forest Management Planning Manual. Now, many of these are called in the manual Condition 77. And this, what that does is that under this Condition 77, the MNR must negotiate with the local level with Aboriginal people to identify and implement ways of achieving a more equal participation by Aboriginal people in the benefits provided through forest management. Remember that 80%, if not more, of Aboriginal communities are located in the forest. So it's important that their well-being and the benefits that derived from the forest certainly provide benefit to them in the long term. So what do they negotiate? If you look here, providing employment and income associated with forestry operations. Okay, and if the Aboriginal community has some type of a mill, sawmill, pulp mill, I think mostly sawmills, then it allows that you can negotiate it, that they have access to wood supply from the SFL, which is very important because you can have a wood mill, a mill, and have no fiber source. Therefore, it wouldn't work. But they want to ensure success for the Aboriginal communities, so this is negotiated. And they provide timber licenses and also access to third-party licenses for different types of SFLs. And I will provide you an example up north of some of the SFLs which are currently operated by Aboriginal communities. So the Forest Management Planning Manual, which is again very, very important, provides specific opportunities for Aboriginal people. And so these individuals, let me just get this going. So what you can see here is that, there we go. The Aboriginal community, oops, I'm having a hard time here. The Aboriginal community can participate on the planning team, and that is highly encouraged, and that's one place where it can have significant influence on what occurs in the forest. And so it's very important that there is involvement in the planning process by the Aboriginal community, and this, as these bullets indicate, encourage and it is expected. Also many local Aboriginal communities have representation on local citizen committees, LCC, right? And so it allows them to be aware of the process. So this gives you just a very quick introduction to forestry and the Aboriginal component, and hopefully you'll become a little bit more aware of what treaties are in Aboriginal rights and how it ties into forest management planning in Ontario.